Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's Dynamic Dialogue. Today, we're going to talk about supplier assessments during COVID-19, why it's important to continue to do that, and some allowances and some circumstances you might want to take into account, and maybe some opportunities you can look at. So this is our weekly Dynamic Dialogue. It's open to supply chain professionals and anyone else interested in supply chain. We're providing a forum for sharing thoughts, ideas, questions, resources. We do a short presentation and then open it up for questions. The schedule and Zoom link is going to change for October. The Zoom link will change, but I think the schedule is going to change. I've been doing these weekly, and it's taking a lot out of me, and I'm having trouble coming up with fresh ideas. So I think I'm going to move to bi-weekly in the October timeframe. Look for an announcement about that in the next week. I do have a guest speaker for next week because it's the fifth Tuesday of the month. We're going to have Colin Walker from AeroEnvironment. He's a great speaker, and he's done a lot with risk-based thinking and risk-based decision making, and he's going to share some tips with us next week. So look forward to that. So when we do supplier assessments, we have a lot of different areas we can focus on: delivery, quality, cost reductions, responsiveness, technology, business fit, sustainability, social responsibility goals now, environmental things, risks, opportunities. We look at compliance and compliance from our suppliers. We look at how they manage programs for us when we do big projects, and a lot of different aspects. So we have a lot of things going on in supplier assessments. One of the things that we look at always is cost. So right now we're seeing a lot of areas where prices are increasing from suppliers due to COVID or in and around COVID. Freight costs are changing and freight times are changing. Labor costs may be changing because we have people working overtime, or maybe we don't have as many people, so they're working overtime because companies have furloughed and laid people off. Overhead costs can be increasing, but they can be decreasing as well because people are working from home still. A lot of companies have done some furloughs and some layoffs, and so their overhead costs may be going up or down. And then the allocation or the base may be changing. So even if the overhead costs are decreasing, if the base has decreased disproportionately, then that can drive total costs up. So it's a very complicated thing with looking at costs now during COVID. Inventory, a lot of companies have experienced shortages in both raw and some finished goods areas. Some companies can't keep products in stock. Other companies can't get products in stock to make their goods and sell those. So we're also looking at days of supply. We're looking at spoilage, and we're looking at lead times, which we'll talk about in a second. That has to do with inventory. So whereas some companies have experienced shortages, other products and other companies' products within different companies are experiencing overstocks. So they have too many of things because their markets aren't open, their channels aren't open, and people aren't buying those types of goods right now or for the last 6 months, or the rate of demand has decreased rapidly, significantly. Deliveries and receipts, on-time delivery is kind of all over the place. Some companies are experiencing very good on-time deliveries, but like I say, lead times have changed, freight and transportation methods have changed, and they've been reduced, they've been altered, the routes have been altered. So there's a lot of different things going on with that. And that affects the fill rate and the perfect order rate, which companies are using to look at what they can do to their customers. So if your suppliers can't do what they need to do, they can't rely on their old traditional methods, then you're not getting that as a manufacturer or a transformer, and then your customers aren't getting that. So that's up and down the supply chain, and it's creating a lot of confusion and a lot of disappointed individuals all along the supply chain. Responsiveness is a big deal. The rate of return on phone calls, because some people are working from home, so they're having to check voicemails from work. They're forwarding calls, and that's not always working well. Internets are getting overloaded. They're spotty. Sometimes you're making a call and you can't get a call through. I have a colleague in the San Jose area, and I don't know if it's the smoke or a lot of the different things, but her phone has been very unreliable lately. So there's a lot of things going on. People are getting more and more emails than ever before. And so just the rate of keeping up usually has been tough, but it's been tougher now with a lot of people working from home and not knowing where to send emails and not getting responses. So you send things back quickly and make sure that your email was seen and is being acted upon. So it's also harder to get complete information. The appropriate sense of urgency doesn't seem to have permeated everywhere where it could have, should have, might have. So there's a lot of different aspects of responsiveness going on. And this is still a very important metric. It was before COVID, and it may be even more important now. Flexibility is one of the things that has really, really increased. The capability and willingness to modify orders, the quantity, the schedule, the mix of the orders. We're seeing a lot of this between customers and suppliers negotiating back and forth what they can do. Yes, we wanted to do 1,000 a month, but we can't do that anymore. So now we need you to only do 800 a month. Or the supplier is asking the customer, I made these to sell to you. I made 5 months worth and I have them. And so I really need you to take them in the order that in the dates that we agreed to, because I need the space, I need the time, I need the cash coming in. So there's a lot of different things. Companies are finding that more and more people on both sides are willing to work differently, but you still need to figure out how that differently is going to mesh for both the customer and the supplier so that they can both win and they can both survive this pandemic. Both are taking on additional tasks. People are taking on additional tasks. They're doing more, they're doing differently. There's a lot of things that are happening there. And yet we're seeing a lot of collaboration on these new challenges too. We're seeing a lot of suppliers and customers really make their relationships work. They're relying on the relationships that they've built before. Sometimes they're forging brand new relationships. Sometimes the relationships that were shaky are now being revamped and they're becoming very strong. Some that were strong before are now on a lot of shaky ground because they can't get this dependability and the reliability from each other. And that goes both to customers and suppliers. The reliability and dependability is very, very crucial to getting through the pandemic, but we're also looking at things like on some of the financial aspects, the debt to equity ratios, payment terms. So how reliable are you? How dependable are you when you've got financial issues? And that's impacting the reliability and the dependability. I can't get paid, so I'm not sending you that. You're not paying me in time, so I'm not doing that. A lot of different things going on there. The supplier financials, again, a big issue. You want to make sure that you're monitoring that, maintaining the payment terms or offering extended terms if you can. Lead times, as I said, longer, lengthened. They're changing. If you're making prepayments, it lengthens your cash to cash cycle. So some companies aren't liking that. Some finance people aren't liking that. Even if the company can afford that, they don't like what it's doing, but it may be necessary to keep suppliers in business and keep them working with you. Freight costs per unit may be higher. It's amazing that gas prices are lower, but people aren't buying. So the freight costs are not necessarily feeling that reduction in the oil and gas costs because we have smaller shipments, fewer items, they're making fewer runs. So there's a lot of different components that are affecting that. On-time shipping from suppliers or to customers is being tracked, but it's tracked in different ways, or it's being tracked in the same way, and yet the circumstances are different. So there's a lot of different nuances being experienced. We're really in uncharted territory. We have been since about March. March and April were highly reactive on both suppliers and customer sides, And there was a lot of things that were done at that point in time just because we didn't have any idea where we would be now. Now that we're getting close to the end of the year for 2020, we need to put more thought and we need to incorporate the lessons we've learned in the last 6 months into the decisions we're making going forward, into the activities that we're planning, into the requests that we're making either of our customers or our suppliers. 2021, even though it's quickly becoming immediate to us, we're almost at the end of September, and then we're in the last quarter of the year, which means 2021 will be looming. It's still a huge question mark to many of us in many different aspects. Customers and suppliers are both experiencing volatile demand. So we're changing our quantities, we're changing the due dates, we're changing a lot of things as quickly as we can respond to the signals that we see in the marketplace. The elections are adding a lot of pressure and more uncertainty in areas like metal prices, gasoline prices, tariffs, and trade, all of those things. We've been very much locked out of other countries for travel bans. Americans are not allowed to travel to all the places they were allowed to travel to previously. So that's impeded that. And some of the goods have been delayed too. So we have a lot of things going on there, and we don't know what the trade situations are going to be going forward. There's still a lot of uncertainty with the elections, and there's local elections, state elections. There's a lot of things coming up in about 6 weeks. Financial pressures, they surely have not abated. Many people are feeling more financial pressures than ever. A lot of joblessness, a lot of people filing unemployment, a lot of people still on furlough, not sure if they're going to go back, and what they're going to go back to. A lot of people have been laid off or just not hired. I teach at California State Northridge, and some of my students told me they lost the jobs that they thought they had in the March and April timeframe. They were excited to have jobs, and those jobs have gone away or been postponed indefinitely, or a lot of things going on, and that puts financial pressure on people, and companies are feeling the same financial pressure. They're not getting the revenues that they expected. Their expenses are changed, but maybe not decreased at the same amount of the revenue for a lot of different reasons. So VUCA is alive and well, and this roller coaster that we're on and have been on for the past 6 months or so, we're still on it. We're not getting off. It's going to be around a little while longer. So when we're assessing suppliers, we need to make some allowances. We need to do some things a little bit differently. Suppliers still need to meet their obligations, even if those obligations have been altered in terms of quantity, delivery dates, delivery times. Suppliers still need to understand and acknowledge that they have obligations to customers. Customers have to acknowledge the obligations too that they have to their suppliers in terms of payments and things like that. Customers also have to acknowledge that there have been lead times that have been changed and probably won't change again in the near future unless they lengthen. So customers have to build that into their MRPs, their ERPs, their ordering systems, and recognize that if that 2-week lead time is now 3 weeks or 4 weeks, they need to update all of that and include that so that they're ordering on time and getting the product that they need on their schedules, and not putting extra pressure on suppliers because they're not accommodating that. The quality goals have not changed, and they shouldn't change. The quality expectations from customer to supplier should have been set prior to COVID, and they should be maintained. Even though companies are going through fluctuations in workforces, fluctuations in demand, fluctuations in working from home and different aspects, they need to acknowledge that the quality goals that they had, that the suppliers put on the suppliers received from customers and customers put on suppliers, those should not change. The quality goals still need to be met, and defects and disruptions are a bigger pain than ever to companies, and that's something that you want to avoid as much as possible. What we do know is customers and suppliers need to communicate more and more and more. They need to share their views on the upcoming demand. So when I say share, that means customers need to let their suppliers know what their expected forecasts are, their revenue streams, their expectations for the suppliers on quantity and delivery schedules. They also need to share information on what their workforce is, what their workforce is comprised of, and if that's going to affect the suppliers. From the supplier end, you need to let customers know if you have reduced capacity, if you have reduced capability, if you have any kind of change to what you need in order to produce the products that you previously provided to this customer. You also need to let them know about workforce changes, specific people, account managers, same thing, account managers and buyers, if those people are changing or will be changing, have the potential to change further, you need to let the other party know that. And suppliers need to manage that capacity and capability so that they can have that flexibility and resiliency. At the same time, the customers are working with their ultimate customers, trying to change their flexibility, their resiliency, their agility in being able to flex to demand changes. The financial situation of both parties is very, very important. So both parties, customers and suppliers, should be talking about the financial situation. If suppliers are in financial need, they need to ask for help. They need to ask for down payments. They need to ask for better payment terms. They need to ask for whatever they need. But they also have to acknowledge that the customer may not be able to accommodate those requests. And so customers have to be candid and open with suppliers about telling them when they can help, when they can't help, how much they can help, and what's going to make it possible for these two organizations to continue to work together in this symbiotic relationship so that both survive this pandemic. And this is not a good time to be taking unfair or unnecessary advantage. If customers see their suppliers as gouging prices or raising prices just because they can, then they need to call them out on that. If customers are taking advantage of suppliers and trying to drive down prices or change other commitments or agreements that they had in place before just because they think they can take advantage of that supplier, then the supplier needs to call them out on that. We have changing circumstances, we have a changing environment, but the essence of the agreements need to be adhered to, and the performance and the obligations are still there. They can be changed and they can be modified, but it's important to keep working together on this and to not try to take advantage of the situation, because when we are through with this, looking in the rearview mirror, what you want to see is that you work together well and that you have a good foundation to go forward. What you don't want to see is that that relationship is broken, that someone betrayed the other's trust, took advantage of the other, because that ongoing relationship will be affected permanently by that. So it is a good time to reset expectations. For customers, customers can make changes to drawing specifications. I know some companies are looking at design changes that they wanted to make. Their volumes are lower, so they think it's a good time to cut that in. The engineers have more time to be working on some of those things, so they've been able to come up with some cost-saving moves and changes to designs and specifications. So that still goes on, and if that needs to be done, then both parties need to work together to enact that. Customers are going to see volumes changing, so their desire for higher flexibility. So can I increase more quickly? Can I decrease more quickly? Can you hold parts for me? So can I change the quantity and delivery from the forecast? I'll give you my best forecast, but I still need flexibility to change that because I don't know what it's going to be like. Customers need to verify lead times. And if lead times have changed and most likely elongated, they need, again, to acknowledge that and incorporate that into their planning so that they're planning accurately as possible, and all their S&OP processes may include that so that they're not caught short or putting undue pressure on a supplier to work overtime and expedite something that they didn't anticipate because they didn't change their lead times. They also don't want to pay extra freight or extra handling to get something in on time. So verify those lead times. Be prepared to discuss payment terms, incremental payments with suppliers. If you cannot do that, if you've worked with your finance people and you understand that you are in cash flow straits as well, you can't make the payments, then you need to be prepared to discuss that with your various suppliers. Some suppliers are going to be very, very upset and very impacted by that. So then you need to work with finance to make sure that you can keep suppliers going in some way, shape, or form, so that at least until you can replace them if you can't do anything else. And if your supplier has said they're going out of business, then you need to be able to do something there to move things around and manage any exposure that you have. So you need to prepare for those discussions. You need to coach your team in how to deal with it. You need to think about that ahead of time before you get someone on the phone or someone gets you on the phone and says, we need to talk about this. You might as well acknowledge the elephant in the room and be preparing for those discussions now if you haven't already done that, because they're probably going to continue. And also you need to look at product life cycle changes. So wherever you were in the product life cycle for the various products that your company makes, that may be changing. Companies may be phasing products out sooner than they expected. They may be delaying new products. They may be accelerating new products to replace a product already on the market. They may be elongating that and pushing out the obsolescence. So there's so many changes that can be happening. Look at where your products are. Are they in the launch and ramp phase? Are they in the full production phase? Are they in the end of life, phasing out? And is that changing? If that's changing, you need to notify your suppliers about that, and you need to be prepared to handle all of those issues within the supply chain organization. If you're suppliers and you're changing prices, then you need to be prepared to support the justification for price changes with data. No one ever turns down a price reduction, but when you have price increases that you may be proposing or asking of your customers, you need to have the data to support that. You also need to not do this every time they place an order. So if they're placing monthly orders or quarterly orders, you do not want to be moving that price around every time. If you can hold that price for at least 6 months, that's what you need to do. You can go to your customer and say, look, these are the things that have changed in my business. This has driven my price from X to X plus something. And yes, I will give you this price for 6 months. What's driving customers crazy is suppliers are changing prices from time to time, month to month, even sometimes week to week. And that doesn't allow the customer to plan or to be able to manage their business. So if your prices are changing because of volume, then let the suppliers should let the customers know that, so customers can make a decision. Can I commit to a higher quantity, maybe over a longer period of time? So both parties need to be flexible in that, but the price changes need to be documented. There needs to be a backup, a justification for that. And the suppliers need to plan on locking prices that they do get increases on for a period of time that's reasonable. And I say that's at least 6 months. If you can do that for longer, it's great. Now, if something happens in November and all things get changed, then you have another reason to go back. But look at what's happened the last 6 months. We have 6 months now worth of history dealing with the pandemic. Figure out what's changed about your business, figure out what your price needs to be, your best effort at that, and then propose that to your customer. Update your lead times. Update your lead times in writing to your customers. If your lead times have gone from 2 weeks to 4 weeks, then you need to put that in an email, not just call them and say, hey, by the way, you need to start planning on this. You need to document that and give that to your customers. If you have justification for that, that's great. If not, and it's just a sign of the times, at least give your customer a heads up in writing that they need to plan on that in order to ensure that they get their products on time. Payment terms, if you have onerous payment terms, this is a good time to go back to your customer and ask for adjustments in that. If you've been pushed to net 45 or net 60 and that's causing you harm, this is not a bad time to ask for net 30. Again, you need to be prepared for a no answer, or you need to be prepared to negotiate, collaborate on a better scenario for both of you. But this is not necessarily a terrible time to ask for adjustments, especially if you have large companies that you are pretty sure can afford that and are managing their cash in pretty well during this whole thing. And also, as a supplier, you need to be preparing to discuss flexibility in quantities and deliveries. Your customers are going to need more flexibility. Things are going to be uncertain for the next few months, if not the next year to year and a half. So you need to be looking at what your organization can do to flex more easily, to be able to adjust your quantities and your deliveries. So look at what effects that's going to have on your company, and then make sure your customers are aware of that. If this needs a new negotiation, a new deal, then this is the time to do it. Not at the last minute, but really looking at this from a perspective of what's going to get us through the next 6 months to a year, because we still have a number of things to go through this time that we're in, this crunch VUCA environment. So what I know for sure is these unusual times are going to continue for the foreseeable future. We aren't going backwards to normal. We're going to get to a new normal, but I don't know how quickly that's going to happen. And it's going to vary for lots of different reasons. It's going to vary all across the United States and the world. So these are uncertain times, and we all need to just be prepared to stay on that roller coaster. Customers and suppliers need to communicate. I've said this 100 times during these dynamic dialogues, but it's very, very important to communicate. Communicate often, communicate open, be candid about your needs and your wants, and look to collaborate for better solutions. Trying to exert a lot of influence or leverage at this time may backfire. So understand your position, understand the position of the party that you're dealing with, and work to get the best solution possible. Market volatility is going to continue. I saw an article in the last week about the holiday events. Usually companies right now in September and into October are getting a lot of deliveries, preparing for the Christmas holidays to have things in stores. Many stores are still shut down. They have reduced hours. There's a lot of companies that have shut stores permanently in different areas, and there's a lot of companies that have declared bankruptcy, and who knows how that's going to affect the holiday season. The Chinese suppliers were impacted that were producing these parts back in the early part of the year that needed to be done in order for us to get things on our shelves for Christmas. The Christmas demand is going to be affected by the economic conditions, which are still unknown. In some cases, the stock market has done well, but the stock market is not the economy in total. Many people are still out of jobs, and the unemployment that goes for 6 months is running out for some people. It's going to keep running out. Those people who applied in June, that's going to be running out the end of the year. So there's a lot of uncertainty about that. It's going to be kind of crazy for that. So the market volatility is going to be there. That means all the financial, economic things are in flux. We have elections in, is it exactly 6 weeks from today? I think it's 6 weeks from today. So at the outcome of that, if we have an outcome within a day or two of that, that still could be seen. That could take longer to get that. The elections they add to the stress for sure. They add to complexity, and all of that is going to need some time to settle out. So even though we have an election on November 3rd, I'm not sure we're going to have a winner that night or the next day. And whatever that winner is going to take some time to settle out to see what happens. Hurricane season is continuing. Beta, there's Sally, and there's Teddy that's still wreaking havoc on the Gulf Coast and the East Coast. So that, and we've still got a few weeks left of hurricane season. So whatever happens there still adds potential havoc to everything else that's going on. The coronavirus itself, I looked strictly at the cases that are diagnosed. The cases per 100,000 people last week, 11 states reported decreases. 2 states actually had no change in the number of cases per 100,000 residents, people. 37 states reported increases in the coronavirus positives. So that's doesn't I'm not sure what that means. But it's not necessarily a good sign. We have people that say we have never left the first wave. We have people say, looking at the fall season, it's going to be tougher with the fall compounded with the flu that we usually get, and now the coronavirus. People are more closed in the fall and into the winter, and that's not a good thing because the virus spreads through the air a lot of times, and people are tired of sequestering, quarantining. The mask thing is a big issue. So whatever happens with that, I don't know, but it's still a lot of volatility. And even though I say what I know for sure, what I know for sure is we don't know, and we're going to find out in time. So I'm going to leave you with this today. Whether we succeed or fail in life and in business depends on our ability to conquer the challenges in our opportunities and to discover the opportunities in our challenges. As I've said today, this is a time when we still have to assess suppliers. If we haven't got metrics in place, we need to put them in place. If we do have metrics in place, we need to reevaluate those, make sure they're the right metrics for this time, make sure that nothing has changed that we need to alter the metrics for, like on-time delivery, and we need to look for those opportunities. This may be a time to reset expectations. This may be a time to go identify a new supplier. Give another opportunity to a supplier that you wanted to try out or tried to expand their portfolio of parts with you. If you're a supplier, this may be a time to approach your customer and say, you know what? I can do more. I can do more types of products. I can give you more value. I can do more with you, for you. So let's talk about that. This is a ripe opportunity for making changes to things that aren't working as well as we would like them to. So next week, Colin Walker from AeroVironment is going to talk about risk-based thinking. He's a great subject matter expert on this. He's done a lot in his own career, and he's done a lot for AeroVironment. He's got some tools and some things he's going to talk to us about. As I said earlier, I'm going to have a new program for October and beyond. So those of you who come every week, and those of you who don't make it live, but who religiously listen to these, and I can tell because you click on these and you are accessing these, I'm going to try to open this up and open my audience up a little bit. So stay tuned for that. As I said, I'll announce that in the next week. And as always, if you'd like to get some help with your company for what's working and what's not working, you can always do a callwithjane.com. Set up a 30-minute call that's free. I will talk about how Purple Link can help your business. We have online webinars. You can enroll from the website. There's a risk-based decision-making class starting next week. If we can get enough enrollees, I need a few more people to sign up. I'm looking at a class called The New Normal to prepare for 2021 and beyond, starting in late October. And CPSM prep classes, they're ongoing. They'll be going for a few more weeks. It's not too late to sign up for those if you think this is a great time or a good time to go get an extra certification or an extra plus in your resume to help you in your next potential job. So that's all I have today. If there's no questions or comments, I'm going to let you go back and have the rest of your day.